Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for this week's video, I decided to make a cook with me. Watch me make some delicious arroz con gandule that tastes just as good as your titis, some plátanos maduro, and some baked chuletas. So let's get into it. So if you've watched any of my other cook with me's, you guys know that the very first thing I like to do when I start cooking is to prepare my meat. So I have here a couple of bone-in thinly sliced pork chops. I think these are pork loin. I like this cut of pork chop because it's not so greasy compared to like pork shoulder, pork chops. Doesn't have too much fat in it. I like it. So the very first thing, after I wash my pork chops, of course, I get a knife and, I make a couple of piercings in my pork chop so that when I season it, all of that seasoning can penetrate really well. And then I'm going to pour a little bit of olive oil because even though I am baking these pork chops, adding the olive oil will help the pork chops to get nice and crispy in the oven. Then I'm going to add a little bit of this Lawry's Casero all-purpose seasoning, and I'm going to try to add it evenly on both sides. And I'm only adding a little bit because I'll be using another seasoning with salt, and I don't want to over salt my chuletas. I'm then gonna go ahead and add a little bit of this Creole seasoning. It's really, really good. It's gonna add some nice color as well. And by the way, I'm gonna add all of the ingredients in the description box below. But as of now, I'm kind of just like eyeballing everything. I cook almost every day, so I very rarely do I ever measure anything. I'm rubbing that in really, really good so that all of that seasoning can go inside those incisions that I made with my knife. And that way my chuletas are nice and seasoned on the inside out. Now you can go ahead and let these marinate in the fridge for up to 2 days for maximum flavor. But tonight I was a little bit in a hurry, so I'm just seasoning right before placing them in the oven, but they still came out really, really good. Now I'm gonna add a bit of dried oregano flakes. Just give it a little sprinkle on both sides. You can also add a little bit of salt-free Italian seasoning if you wish. Looking good. All right, now my chuletas are ready to go in the oven while I go and prepare everything else for tonight's meal. I have my oven set to 350 degrees. I also have a small container filled with water in my oven. This is going to generate steam so that my chuletas can remain nice and juicy and do not dry out. All right, let's make my arroz con gandules. It's been a while since I've shared this. I do have a video on how I make it on my channel. It is my most popular video to date, so be sure to check it out if you haven't already. So I have here my caldero. It is set over medium-high heat, and I'm gonna add about 3 strips of chopped bacon. And the cool thing about using bacon is I don't have to add a lot of oil to my caldero because the bacon is going to release a lot of grease. So after like about 2 minutes and my bacon is nice and golden, I'm gonna add like half of a red onion. Now this is red onion that I already had in the refrigerator. This isn't traditional to arroz con gandules, but I had it on hand. I don't want it to go to waste, and it's gonna make my rice taste really good, so why not? So once the bacon is cooked, I add the onion and I'm gonna stir everything really well until it's nice and fragrant and the onions are translucent. And I'm going to be stirring constantly. That way my onions do not burn. So during this entire process of cooking the onions with the bacon, I kept saying over and over, man, this smells so good, because it smelled amazing. Such a good combination. All right, now I'm gonna go in with the star of the show, a little bit of sofrito. This is about 2 tablespoons, like 2 heaping tablespoons of my fresh homemade sofrito, which I do have 2 videos on how to make it, an authentic version and a practical, simple version. Then I'm gonna add 2 heaping tablespoons of some tomato sauce. No measuring, just eyeballing, but I know that it's about 2 tablespoons. All of the ingredients will be listed in the description box below, by the way. 1 bay leaf, some stuffed Spanish olives, and some chopped pimientos. Pimientos are just pickled red peppers. 1 packet of Sazón. I am using the Goya brand, but you can use any brand. Just make sure that it has annatto and culantro. Don't use the one with saffron. Then 1 packet of some Goya pork sazon. This is simply just pork concentrated seasoning. Adds a nice touch. If you don't have it, that's okay. We already got bacon in here. There's plenty of natural pork flavor, but this is just going to, add a little extra pork flavoring. Then I'm gonna go in with some garlic powder. This trick I actually learned from an old friend of mine, and she made some good arroz con gandules. A little bit of black pepper. Give everything a good stir. It is looking beautiful. And a reminder, my heat is set over medium high, so that's about like 5.5 on my electric stove. Now I am going to add my can of gandules. I'm using El Jibarito brand. This is a brand from Puerto Rico. They make it in Bayamon. Gonna throw that in there with the liquid as well, because that liquid has a lot of really good flavor. And I love these gandules because I struggled to pick one up with the spatula, but I just love the color on them. They're like more red than the Goya ones. The Goya gandules, they're more green. They're just really pretty. I like them. And I find that their flavor is stronger. So if you can find this brand, great. Then I'm gonna add 2 cups of medium grain rice. As you can see, the grains are very small. Traditionally, this is the size of grain that is used for arroz con gandules. However, if you don't have medium grain, you can use long grain rice. You're just going to need to add a little more water, but not too much, probably like, I don't know, 1/4 cup more water. And then I'm gonna give everything a good stir. If you notice, I haven't added any water yet, only the liquid that was in the can of the gandules. So at this point, I have not added water yet. I'm just stirring everything around really good until it's nice and fragrant. This trick, I learned it from my really good friend, Christina. And yeah, it just helps the rice absorb the flavors really well. All right, I am stirring it constantly because I want to make sure that the rice is not sticking to the bottom. Just letting all of those delicious spices and flavors absorb. Now I'm gonna go in with 1 full can of water. This is equivalent to 1.5 cups. Give that a good stir. As you can see, it just looks like a very thick soup. That's how it should feel like, a very thick soup. And if 1.5 cups of water seems like a little bit of water to you, remember, we also added the liquid that was in the can of gandules. That's about a little over 1/4 cup. And plus with like the grease from the bacon, the oil, all that, that's also liquid. That's also adding moisture to the rice. So we don't need to add too much water. If you're just making basic white rice, then the measurements are a little different. They're a little more precise, but for arroz con gandules, we add a little less water. And then I gave it a little taste test to see if I needed more salt, and I did. So I added about 1 teaspoon more of salt, but this is to preference. So you add salt to your taste. Give everything a good stir, and I'm going to wait until all of this comes to a nice simmer before putting the lid on. So now that the water has come to a simmer, I'm going to put the lid on my caldero. I am keeping the heat level the same on medium-high heat. And I'm gonna let this cook for a couple of minutes until most of the water has evaporated. All right, so it took me about 11 minutes for the water to get to this point. Most of it has evaporated, but as you can see, there's still a little bit of liquid in there, but as I stir it, you'll notice that it starts to disappear. So I'm just gonna stir everything really well. I'm going to make like a little mountain in the middle of my caldero. I like to do this because I don't like so much pegao on the side of my caldero. Pegao is what Puerto Ricans call the rice that sticks to the side of the pot. So yeah, I'm gonna make a little mountain, put it in the middle. As you can see, there's a couple of raw pieces still, which is good. That's what you want. The rice should not be fully cooked at this point. So yeah, so I'm going to put the lid on my caldero. I'm gonna set my heat to lowish. For me, that's the number 2 on my electric stove, and I'm gonna just set it and forget it while I make the rest. Now it's time to make sweet plantains. This plátano is so ripe. I was very excited to prepare it because I love when they get to this point. All right, now it's time to chop this bad boy up. Again, this is so ripe, it's so good, but as you can see, the inside of the fruit is perfect. I simply just made a little thin and careful cut along the back side of the plantain, and very gently I'm going to remove the peel. And since it's so ripe, the peel got very, very, very thin. So after I remove the peel, I'm just going to chop up my plantain into 1-inch rounds. And dinner is complete. It took about 45 minutes for my chuletas to finish cooking. They came out nice and tender on the inside and a little crispy on the outside. My rice came out really good too. It's nice and fluffy and very flavorful. Came out perfectly. And as always, thank you so much for watching my video. If you've enjoyed today's tutorial, give this video a thumbs up. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and hit that notification bell because a new video will be out every week. Until next time.